Welcome to the Road Church. Did anyone else feel like this week was hard and long? I was preaching last week. It feels like it was a month ago. I think I got a text on Tuesday from my best friend saying, did you know that today is supposedly the worst day of the year for everybody? I think it's at like two weeks after Christmas. It's January. It's blah. Anyways, if you have also had a long week full of stomach viruses and sleepless nights and many things to do, I'm glad you're here with us, and maybe this time we've carved out of our weeks can be a time we just let it go a little bit, shed that kind of, how am I going to get through this week, a little bit, and open up to where God might meet us. That's what I'm hoping for this morning anyways. So I was, this week, as I was preparing this message, it struck me. My kids, they are 10 and 7, they are full on in Harry Potter mode. They are, like, I've walked into my daughter's room at 10:30 at night and she is still reading. She's at that stage, which I secretly kind of love, but also know it's going to be awful the next day. But I love that they're into it. So we're in the middle of planning a 10-year-old's birthday party, Harry Potter birthday party. So I've been on the interwebs and looking at Pinterest, which is what moms who are planning birthday parties do. And on it, there are a bazillion ways you can make Harry Potter birthday party. So you can make a sorting hat out of paper mache. You can make a golden snitch out of a Ferrero Rocher, which is a good idea. I might do that one. You can make a Quidditch pitch in your backyard. And if all of those words mean nothing to you, if you're not a Harry Potter universe person, don't worry. We're not talking about Harry Potter this morning at all. But what struck me as I was looking through kind of the Harry Potter ideas is that there's this whole world of people who love Harry Potter, like more than my 10-year-old. They are into it. They are dressing up, and they are having conventions, and they are acting out scenes, and they are playing Quidditch on fields. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And part of me was wondering, I wonder what it is about these stories. And I was kind of talking with Evangeline about it, my 10-year-old. What is it about this story that's so good? And she's like, I don't know, but it's weird that there's a book that makes me want to be a part of that world. And I was like, oh yeah, that is interesting. That there's something about that story that is drawing them. So I was thinking about it, and I'm preparing my message, and I was wondering if what people are responding to in Harry Potter, there's probably a bunch of things they're responding to, but one of the things could be this sense of wonder. So I have a couple pictures that kind of explore this sense of wonder in Harry Potter. So this is the first movie where he's like, this is when he first discovers, oh my gosh, my life might not be what I think it is. And there's another image. He's like, what is this magical thing? And it's amazing. And then there's this image, which I love this one. So this is the first time he sees this whole other world that he's a part of, this wizarding world. So he's this normal kid, he kind of has a sad little life, and all of a sudden he discovers he's part of this bigger world. And I love this look on his face like, is this real? This is weird. I kind of like it. Is this where I belong? So this is the lens with which I was reading our text for today. And the text is found in John 2, and it's the story of Jesus turning water into wine. So you can maybe see why this kind of caught my attention this week. So I'm going to read the story from the scriptures, and then we'll kind of get into it. So in John 2, it says this, on the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. And when the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come. And his mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. And now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. So that's like those big blue gallon bins, barrels. Think of that. So Jesus said to them, fill the jars with water. And they filled them to the brim. And he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the chief steward. And so they took it. And when the steward tasted the water that had become wine, he did not know where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. The steward called the bridegroom and said to him, everyone serves the good wine first, and the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. but you have kept the good wine until now." And Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So all year, here at the Road, we're kind of smack dab in the middle of it, we have been wondering about what is the road that we are on. And we've been following this book called We Make the Road by Walking as a frame to explore the story that we are hearing as we are on the road. This big story told in Scripture. So this is this week's text, this John 2 text. And as we just read, this is the first account of Jesus doing a miracle in John's Gospel. And miracles are a big part of the story we are hearing on the road. You can't go 2 pages in any of the Gospels without running into a miracle. And so if we're going to talk about the story of God and the story of us, we have to talk about miracles. And this one, this first miracle, this turning water into wine, has a special appeal. I think it gives us a framework to start to begin to comprehend what's going on with all of Jesus' miracles, with what's going on in this kingdom thing he's talking about. So just to kind of get into the story a little bit, Jesus is in Galilee. So that's close-ish to where he grew up. He's in a place he's familiar with, and he's with people who he's familiar with. Obviously, it's a family friend who invited him, his mom, his friends to come along, and they're at this wedding. Now, we've all gone to weddings, and they're a big deal. They are now, and they were then too. And much commentary that you'll find about this story is about how weddings in this time were multi-day affairs. The parents and hosts were footing the bill for all of these people, usually the village, the whole community, to come and eat and drink and celebrate the union of this one couple for days. And so John Vanier John Vanier is the guy who started L'Arche, the community where able-bodied people and disabled people live together in community. And he has this wonderful sentence in his book on the Gospel of John, and it just says, "Weddings are a wonderful human reality. They are for all people, in all cultures, they're a wonderful human reality. But at this wedding, something has happened, and they've miscalculated how much wine would be needed. And I'm not sure what this says about Galileans, but they drank a lot until the wine ran out. And Mary is here, Mary, the mother of Jesus, and she's here, and she probably heard it kind of through the panicked whispers of the servants, and she says to Jesus, hey, I think you could do something about this, right? I love thinking about her. She's been treasuring all of these things about who Jesus is kind of in her heart. She's been watching him grow. She's been hearing what people have been saying about him. And then she hears the wine run out, and I love that in her mind's eye, all of a sudden she's like, hey, I bet you could do something about this. And you have to imagine she's using kind of her mom voice. That's what I like to imagine. Like, hey, you could do something about this. And he's not there yet. He says, why are you telling me this? This is not my problem. I can't do anything about this. John has him saying, my time has not yet come. So you could read a few things into those words. Did he just not see how he could help? Did he kind of think it wasn't befitting of his role as the Son of God? Did he just not know what he was capable of? Whatever the case may be, the text makes clear that he had to be prompted a little bit, and that his mom fully believed that he could do it. It's almost like she says, women, what can I do about this? And she goes to servants, like, don't pay attention to him, but just do what he says, kind of undermining him a little bit. But Jesus looks around. Okay, well, if this is my time and this is what I'm going to do, he looks around and he sees what's around, and he sees these 6 stone jars for water for purification. And that's a detail we're meant to notice and we're meant to take note of. This is water. These stone jars are for water meant for purification. So purification rites were big back then. You would ceremonially wash your hands before meals, before sacrifices, presumably before weddings and big kind of community events. So it makes sense that they were here for this wedding. And at this point, this is where I think our eyes start to kind of get a little bit bigger. I like that Harry Potter, like, right? How fitting is it that Jesus, starting his ministry of this new kingdom, this new way of living in grace, starts by taking the water that was deeply understood to be necessary for getting right with God, with being clean, for right living, right community. That water, he takes it and he transforms it into wine, which you might say is kind of a non-essential need, something extravagant. He changes it into wine. "Fill the jars with water," Jesus told the servants, and I wonder what they thought. But they did it, and they filled them to the brim. And Jesus said, "Take a cup of what's in there and give it to the chief steward, the guy in charge of the party." The steward took a drink, and he probably thought, "Oh, thank goodness someone found some wine." And he doesn't know where it comes from, and he doesn't really care. And he takes the wine to the bridegroom and says, "Everyone's serving the good wine first, but you've saved the best wine for now. Oh, that's great." To which I like to imagine the bridegroom going like, "Yes, that is what I meant to do." Ah. But I also like to imagine Jesus' face here in this moment. I wonder if he kind of got a little smile, like, a little pleased with himself, pleased with this work look on his face. I wonder if he took a sideways glance at Mary and was like, "Oh, you were right." Was there even sort of a thrill in his own heart of, yeah, wine out of water. Yeah, that's right. That's what this is about. The last thing that kind of struck me in this story as I was spending time with it this week was the weight of the words at the end of the story. So in verse 11, it says, "Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him." I imagine his disciples getting that Harry Potter look on their face when they realized that something new was going on, that it was not usual, not ordinary, but wonderful. And what does this mean, right? So that quote from Jean Vanier, he kind of goes on in this passage, and I wanted to read the whole thing because I quite love the picture it set. So he writes, "One could have imagined that Jesus would have wanted to give these men a spiritual and intellectual formation, especially since they'd be called to an important role in the future. It would have been normal for Jesus to take time with them, to share and pray with them, to bring them into the desert for a spiritual experience, or to a school to deepen their knowledge of the Torah, the scriptures, and the prophets. But where does Jesus take them first of all? To a magnificent celebration, a wedding feast in Cana. And it's there that they begin their journey of faith. Wedding feasts lasted a week. People came from near and far. There's families, neighbors, villages, drink and food." And he says this, "Weddings are a wonderful human reality. People dress up in their best clothes. They rejoice, sing, dance, joke, laugh, have fun together. And so Jesus plunges his new disciples into the fullness of their humanity." In the Gospel of John, it's a wonder to look at this miracle, this first miracle, and see this wonderful, generous plunging into the fullness of our humanity. The disciples are discovering this whole new world right for the first time. And it's not a bare minimum kind of world. It's not the bare essentials. It's this miracle, this first miracle reveals that there's life with flourishing, life with celebration, life with abundance that's beyond subsistence. It's in the realm of glory. That word glory in the scriptures, I think it's one of those words we sometimes can hear a lot in church settings, and it sometimes means something, and sometimes you're kind of like, it just passes you by as, oh yeah, that's a church word. But glory, one of the roots in Hebrew means presence, and it means something like weighty presence. And I love that idea that this miracle of making a lot of wine is what reveals a weighty presence, a substantial presence of God, and that's the glory he's revealing. So setting up Jesus' miracles, all of them, in this way, I think means something, and I think we can kind of read into the rest of miracles that John talks about and in other Gospels in this way. So I think a lot has been made maybe in your life as you've journeyed on your faith journey about whether or not miracles actually happened. Did that actually happen? And we kind of get hung up on that question, or maybe you know someone who gets hung up on the question of, did miracles actually happen? And part of me is like, I wonder if that's not even the right question, because I don't think proof of whether it did happen or didn't happen actually would change us anyways. Frederick Buechner kind of writes about God could write in the sky, I am actually here. And some of us might be changed and some of us might not. There's something else that happens when our hearts are transformed, and I don't think it has anything to do with proof. So to grasp what's going on in a miracle, I wonder if it'd be a better question to ask, what's the outcome of this miracle? What's the point of this miracle? Why? And why does it make a difference? So I was kind of going through some of the miracles that stick out in my head, the stories I like about the Jesus stories, and I always wondered, what do Jesus' miracles do? Well, all of them, every single one of them, they affirm human life, full stop. They affirm the body as it was made. They restore the body. Your hand doesn't work. Let's restore that hand. Your eyes don't work. Let's restore those eyes. And then they show what was thought to be the end of the story. So we have that one story where the lame man is by the pool, and if he gets into the pool, maybe he'll somehow be miraculously healed, and he can't, and there's this sense of that's the end of his story. He can't get to the pool on his own. But what miracles show is that the end of the story is not actually what we thought was the end of the story. There's always something a little bit more. Miracles don't prove anything, like I just said. Signs and wonders can be made to seen kind of by anybody. Pharaoh's magicians in the Old Testament did their own signs and wonders. So did a lot of other kind of messianic types wandering around the desert in Jesus' time. Indeed, there's been a lot of movements within Christian history that claim miracles, claim signs, claim Holy Spirit power, but they're not full of the fruit. There's not this fruit of something like Jesus. So proof is never the goal of the miracle. In fact, Jesus kind of consistently goes out of his way to shut down people looking for miracles, doesn't he? And to tell them not to talk about them. Don't tell anyone about this. Proving by convincing someone that's never the way the kingdom happens. It's not the modus operandi of the kingdom. And it's never effective in someone's transformation. So that's making me wonder about these miracles. And I look at this miracle in John, this water into wine, and I see miracles, rather than proving something, they reveal something. They reveal the greater truth of the situation. They reveal what God truly is and what human life is truly meant to be. The outcome of every miracle in the New Testament is a human life being made whole and restored to live well in itself, restored to live well in its community. That is the goal of every miracle, body, mind, and soul. And this first miracle is symbolic and wonderful because it's not just like barely living, it's like big living, lots of wine, barrels, way more wine than anybody should drink, kind of living. John talks about this miracle being a sign of his presence, a sign of the reality of God. And another word for sign is sacrament. We kind of use those interchangeably sometimes in church, sign and sacrament. A sacrament is the sense of God's grace being made real and meeting us right here. So we have things we call sacraments like baptism or the Eucharist. Those are kind of tangible ways we say, yeah, God's presence and grace is right here, right now. It's a sacrament. Doing this thing is a sacrament. So last year when I'm also a campus minister, and we had a North American campus ministers conference, and every one of us had to read a book called How Not to Be Secular by Jamie Smith. And he's kind of this, I don't know if he's a bigwig. He might like to think he's a bigwig in the philosophy, theological world. And it's kind of a dense book, but in it, he gives this pretty clear diagnosis that in the Reformation, so that point in history where a bunch of people are saying, oh, I think we need to do this Christian faith a little bit differently, and they separated from the Catholic Church. There's many good reasons for that, but one of the kind of unintended consequences of that movement was that they kind of stopped paying attention to these embodied sacraments. So there's a sense that Christian faith became a more intellectualized, something you could figure out, something you could think your way through, as opposed to something you experienced, a way, a path you walked along, something embodied. And Jamie Smith says that this reaction effectively has excarnated the gospel. It's made Christianity kind of this matter of believing in certain sentences, right? And the Christian faith, sometimes in our times, could be said it's kind of disembodied from our real life. It's a matter of he called them brains on sticks. That's all we are. We're not bodies, we're just brains on sticks. Because that's the only thing that's important. The right idea about God is what gets you to heaven, and that's the end of the story. And that's not the end of the story. It's not the story we read in these scriptures. The Road Church is an accepting community. That's part of our vision statement. And then the other parts of our vision statement is that we long to see God everywhere. We long to experience God everywhere. And we long to then be his presence everywhere, his hands and feet everywhere we go. So quite the opposite of excarnating the word of God, excarnating the gospel, we long to be right in the middle of incarnating this gospel in our actual everyday lives. So everything we do at this point that you've experienced in this little church, so our potlucks, that is a way we are incarnating the gospel. The way we go clean up the river once in the spring, the way we are making sandwiches, those are ways we incarnate this big, beautiful life that Jesus is revealing, right? These are the things we do. So anytime you think about, what does this church do and what is it about? You can think, we are incarnating the gospel everywhere we go. When we pay attention to how well we do at our jobs, when we pay attention to doing those jobs faithfully, that's incarnating the gospel. All of this, all of the things we do point to this incarnated grace. And that's why I love this miracle. The miracles are moments where Jesus gives us a sign, gives us a sacrament about the truth of the situation. Miracle after miracle in the scriptures. Go home and read some of them and be like, wonder about them a little bit. He's making bodies whole. When you think about blind Bartimaeus, he's like, what do you want, Bartimaeus? And he's like, I want to see. Okay, he's making bodies whole. He's making minds whole. The man who had the legion of demons in him, he takes that and he makes his mind whole. He gives him wherewithal and presence and peace. And he makes our hearts whole. I think of Mary Magdalene, the one said to be the woman who's crying and pouring out her tears and wiping Jesus' feet with her hair and her tears. There's something that has happened in her life that has made her whole, a vulnerable woman being able to know she is loved. That's a miracle, right? She was no longer afraid. Miracles reveal a whole new way in the world, and I love that. They pull back the curtain to see what's really there, and that's a powerful message. The gospel life, it's not just about making ourselves clean. It's about purification, but then it's so much more. It's about this abundance and this wine. Even in Cana, I love how they keep saying it's in Cana, it's in Cana. It's right in one place. It's happening. Even in Calgary, it's happening right here. We can see that. So I was thinking about the miracles. I was thinking about Harry Potter, and I was like, how do we respond to this text on this point in our story? And there's probably any number of appropriate responses, gratitude, praise. But for me, this week, the response has been wonder. In closing, I want to offer you this place of wonder as something we can take into our week with us. This week, as I was thinking about this, Wendy, she's not here today, but she mentioned to me, you might have seen them on, again, the interwebs, these viral videos of people who have been given colorblind glasses. So if they're colorblind, that usually means it's kind of on a red-green spectrum. You don't see the reds and you don't see the greens, and it kind of blends into a little bit of brown, variations of brown or a dull gray-green. And so somehow some company came across this way to make lenses that filter the light so that the people's brains see the colors like everyone else sees in that way. And the responses of these people is so arresting. You will watch it, and it's amazing about how seeing something totally normal, like color, something we see every day, passes us by, but it's like the whole world for them has been changed dramatically, and their responses are big and really quite moving and quite beautiful. And it's this sense of wonder of the whole world is something different. The whole world is not what I thought it was. There's something more being revealed. So we're going to watch these 3 little responses. They're funny, and you can laugh. I hope you can hear the dialogue well. And so there's 3 in a row. It'll take about 5 minutes, and just notice what you notice. See what you see in these wonder responses.
All right. Try them on.
Okay, so your shirt is like decidedly red.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right?
Yeah.
What color is that?
And this is. Is this red?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is really red?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like a reddy orange. What color are those balls behind you?
So this is like super green.
Mm-hmm. That's green.
This is blue.
Yeah.
Yay! It's kind of like actually mind blowing. This purple.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Believe it!
I can't believe it. Look at the table, man. Like, there's so many colors in it. Oh my God, it's so real.
It is real. It is real.
Now you can dress
I can't. Look at the cow, man. This is spectacular. I can't even imagine how different the world looks. I swear to God. Like, it's so crazy. It's so crazy. Like, it's so
You're making
crazy,
me
man.
emotional.
Like, I can't believe
You're
how
making me
different
emotional.
the world is.
Put them on. The sunglasses. How does it look? Look at the balloons. Can you see with our eyes now, baby? What colors you see?
Those.
You see colors now?
Oh, the trees are neat.
Wow.
That is very
He looks like a robot.
Can you see colors now? That's why I'm orange.
Say a bit more.
Yeah, this is a.
Look at their hair.
It's red.
You okay?
I never saw this before. This is I never saw you color hair before. It's awesome looking. It really is. I never saw this. It's so bright.
I had to put that one in. It's awesome looking. It's so bright. I loved the responses of three very different men in three very different life situations, seeing color for the first time, this beautiful, emotional response, unexpected. The gospel world is bigger than we know, it's bigger than we knew. And we're starting to get a glimpse of it as we go along in this story. And it's more beautiful than we can conceive of. And there's a wonder when we discover that what's the truth of the situation, the truth that we are beloved, that we are redeemed, and that this world is good and beautiful, that is something very powerful. This life was not intended to be a life of servitude, but a life in community that's celebrated with the best wine. And we don't enter this world by mentally assenting to a whole bunch of sentences, and we don't enter by kind of going into a spiritual place with jargon and vague meaning. We enter it by doing our real life right here and seeing it being revealed wherever you are, with my kids as they're into Harry Potter and vomiting all night, with you and your job. That's where this is being revealed, that God is present, and it's a weighty presence. When we enter this world, my response wants to be, it's awesome looking, and it's so bright, and I never knew the world was like this. So I wonder if that could be our response to this miracle and our response to the presence of Jesus in our lives this morning.